Welcome to Rethinking K-12 Education Grant on Demand. This episode is Collaborating with Google Docs for Teachers. What and why? What is this? Google Docs can be used for collaboration between students on individual devices. Why does it matter? Students are able to work on a single document, in person or virtually, simultaneously contributing to a single group assignment. Learning objectives. By the end of this episode, you'll be able to share a single document to multiple students to work on simultaneously, use comments and suggestions to guide student work, use the version history for accountability and to recall deleted/altered content, organize duplicate copies of documents in Drive, and plan real-life applications for collaborative docs with students.
For group work, in the past, students could work together but would have their own individual papers, worksheets, note sheets that they were all working on, and then would have to join together to try to put together and make sense of all the differing content that they brought to the table. With Google Docs, when you use collaborative docs with your students, that is no longer a problem. The students are all contributing to the same document at the same time and can see what their peers are doing. So student A may decide that they're going to focus on the life cycle of a frog. Another person in his team who may have also been intent on doing that will now see that information has already been gathered and put into the document, and they can focus on something else. If they were working separately, you may end up with 5 students with the same 5 facts, rather than 5 students with 5 differing facts because they all saw what the other ones were doing. The communication between students goes up several levels when they're in a single document together, because even if they're not sitting near each other, even in the same room, even in the same building, they are still able to see what one another is doing in real time as it's happening. So I'm going to walk you through the steps of creating a collaborative document and then how to share it with your students and make the most of it. First, I'm going to review some formatting. I would recommend that when you create a collaborative document for your students to use, that you set up all the formatting ahead of time. Students tend to get very carried away with font style and size and colors and backgrounds and pictures, and they tend not to focus as much on the actual content. So if you set up the formatting ahead of time and tell the students to leave it as it is, then they can focus on the activity at hand, the assignment at hand, and not so much the looks of the document itself. All of your formatting tools are at the top in this toolbar. You have a great deal of font options within Google. You can look into more fonts to see all of them and pick ones that you may like to add to your font library that's more quickly accessible here. You can change the font size, you can change the colors, the alignment, the spacing, add bullets, add numbers, anything that you want to do to set it up for the student so it's clear. You have additional formatting tools in this formatting column list, and you can insert other resources for the students. You can insert images, you can insert a table, drawings, charts, special characters, equations. So these can be used for science or math, where there are a lot of equations and special characters that need to be added in for the students to be able to accurately convey what they're learning. If you wanted to add an image, you could upload one from the computer, from your drive. You can also just search the web. And if you search on the toolbar that pops up on the right, anything you pick, you can just click on it and it will insert automatically. I would also recommend that you insert one box with the task, the directions, the goal for the assignment at the very top of the document so that the students have it front and center when they get into it. You could encourage the students not to remove it and to leave it there so they can refer back to it if they get lost or confused or need to check back on what it is that they should be focusing on. So that's something that I would always encourage you to do. Is put the task, put the directions right up top. You could make it a different color so that the students are guaranteed to see it. You could fill it in a different color to make sure that it stands out. Anything that you choose to do. And if you have a table, whether it's one box or several, you also can right-click in it to delete it, to add other columns, add other rows, or adjust the design and formatting of that. So once you have your document set up with the formatting, the directions, the prompts, the questions, all set up to guide the students, you can go to File, make a copy. Now, depending on how many groups of students you're going to give this to, you may have to make several copies. If you have students and partners, you may have 10 or 12 groups. If you have them in groups of 4 or 5, you may have a great deal less. But you want to name the groups in a way that's going to be identifying for both you and the students. So you can name them Group 1, Group 2, Group 3, so on and so forth, or you can name them by students. Group Jeff, Marie, Joe. That way you know which students it is that are in this if you need to look at it quickly. If they have a question, if you want to check on them, you know exactly which group has which students in it. You can pick a specific folder to put it into and then say okay, and it will automatically create this new document that is identical to the one you were just working on. If you go back into your Google Drive, you could create a new folder. You can either right-click or just go to New Folder. Name it to identify it for yourself, and you can put that document in. And like I said, if you need to make several of them, you'll make the next one, Group Steve, Annette, and Frank. And when you go to Folder, you can just pick that specific folder to automatically kick it into. And now you have the folder set up for this group. So once you have all your groups set up, once you have all your documents made, then you can go in and share it with those students. There are 2 possible ways that you can do this. When you go to share, right now it's private only to me as the teacher. You can either get a shareable link. Right now, again, it's restricted to just me. So you could say anyone with the link and change it to editor. That way, when you share it with the students, they will have the same ability to edit and alter and change things in it that you do. Or at the top, you can just add those students in. If I wanted to add them by email, I can now just add them right in. Depending on where you're sharing this out, if you're putting it into a Google Classroom or if you're sharing it in Schoology, you want to make sure that only the students in this group have access to it. So adding the students this way by their ID number, their email, is a much easier way to ensure that only Steve, Annette, and Frank have access to this document. When you do the link, you want to make sure that if you share it, you're sharing it through a Schoology message just to Steve, Annette, and Frank. Because if you post it in a more public forum, then anybody can come in and alter and change things. So once you've added them in, then you can say done. And now these 3 students and you all have access to this document and can all see what's happening in it. So when students are in a group project, a concern of both students and teachers can sometimes be that there is not an equitable distribution of effort being put in. One student may be working very, very hard, while another is not doing so much. One of the great things about Google Docs is that they have a version history. When you go to File, and you go to version history, you have two options: to see all the version history and to name this current version. So first, if you click on version history, you can see the name of who is contributing, who made any changes. It will break it down by time if there were a great deal of changes in a short span of time, or it'll break it down in bigger chunks if there was a small change and then hours later another change. So you can go in and see, and it will recall what it looked like during each of these versions. So if I go through, I can see when I added in the table, when I added in the task. I can see anything that's been altered in this document. Now this can work in two ways. One, accountability. If Steve, Annette, and Frank are all in this document and the only person making any edits to it is Steve, then I know that Annette and Frank are not contributing in the same way. And it's either because that group has chosen to divide work up, where Steve is the only one putting things into the document and the other two are doing other work and contributing separately, or Steve is indeed the only one doing work and a conversation needs to be had with the other group members, and it will affect, at the end of things, the grading and the credit and where that all goes. The other way you can use version history is to pull back information that may have been lost. Students and teachers very frequently delete things by accident. They move something, they click on something that changes everything, the formatting goes sideways, and now the whole document's a mess. You can go in to your version history and change it. I can just restore this version and the document will go back to how it looked right here at 7/28. It'll confirm it with you. So again, this is not something that can be done accidentally. But if I decide to restore it to this, and then I change my mind and I don't want this anymore, I can go back. And again, the other version is still here. Restored this version back to what it was before. And it will update it in real time automatically like that. So that's a good tool to be able to use, especially when you do get a frantic student whose partner deleted everything while they were trying to move something. They were trying to copy and paste, and now all their information is gone. Being able to pull it back with the version history is essential. You can also name the versions. So when you look at this version history, you can change it to confirm for yourself that you've reviewed it, that each day, each period that you know the students were working, you looked and saw that all Steve, Annette, and Frank, all their names showed up. They all contributed today, and you can just say August 12th, checked. So you know the last time that you looked over things and confirmed that the students were all contributing, or that you made sure they were on the right track. So you can go in and change these version names to whatever is going to help you stay on top of the students and stay organized. Now, another thing that you can do is add comments and suggestions. So I said when you share it with students up here, when I add up here, you can make them an editor, a commenter, a viewer. When you make them an editor, that means that they can do everything. And if you're looking in, rather than going in, if you see that information they have is maybe inaccurate, and you want to go in and help guide them, you can leave a comment or a suggestion helping them along. So you can go in and suggest edits. You can change your view. Over here on the right hand side, you can go to editing, suggesting viewing, and I can just suggest edits. Try not to delete the taskbar. Now, they'll see this, But if I change this to the final draft, that won't show up. It only shows up as a suggestion to the students that are editing it. And again, they can go in, you can go in and delete it. You can, if students are putting in information that you know maybe isn't accurate, you can just go next to it, and this little plus sign next to the link button, you can click on and say, check your sources on this. And then again, when the students are in, they'll see that the teacher left a comment telling them to check on something, and it'll highlight what that comment is connected to. So you are able to support the students, again, whether you're in the same room as them, whether you're in the same building as them, whether they're working at home and you're checking at home, whatever it is, you don't need to be live with them, looking over their shoulders, reading documents from 7 different groups simultaneously while they're all working in your room. You can check it later on and leave comments for the students to look into the next time that they resume work. And again, easily can just delete. So that's how you set your collaborative document up. Design it, format it, add in whatever supports, links that you want to provide to the students. If you want to add links to resources for them to use, you can just type whatever you need, and this little link will let you do that. And the students will have access to whatever it is you want to help them along with. You can share it with them. Again, add them as people with their email, with their ID number, as editors, so that they have full access to the document. You can go in and leave suggestions, leave comments that the students will be able to see and follow up on and use to help guide what they're doing and lead them to success. You can use the version history to check on accountability, that each student is contributing appropriately, and to pull information back that may have been accidentally lost. So lastly, I'm going to just give you some suggestions for ways that you can use this with your students. One of the most common ways is for scaffolding. So if you have 4 students in a group and they're all reading a book, you may have each of them read the same one chapter, but they only need to answer questions or summarize a few pages. So you might insert a table, one for each student. Student 1, pages 1 to 5. Student 2, pages 6 to 10, and so on and so forth for the length of the activity or the reading. You can do this for DBQs, for chapters in a book, and then have each of them in this one document summarizing, sharing findings, sharing questions that they found in the part that they focused on the most. And now you have summaries for the whole chapter, but each student was only responsible for reading 5 pages. That can take a huge load off a student who may be overwhelmed reading 20 pages. If 3 of his classmates are now able to share what happened in the other 15, and he only has to share what happened in 5, now they have not only written down and therefore better consumed the information that they read, but now they've also shared with their peers and been able to cut down on their individual work. So that's one really good way to do it. Use it for scaffolding, for group work, for the whole class in a single document, for groups of students breaking up into chunks, however you want to do it to best benefit your population. You can also use it to have the students respond to their peers. That commenting feature is something that students can also have access to. If it's a whole class assignment, you can share it with the link and make it so that they're commenters. And then every student can go in and share a wondering. Even at the start of the school year, you could have them share something they did over the summer break and have every student go in and leave a comment on somebody else's. So it's not just go in and say what you did over the summer, also go in and leave a comment for somebody else. And tell them that you also love going to water parks. Tell them that you also went to Carolina to see your cousins. So using the commenting tool for the students helps them engage and interact in this document and have more conversation about things than they maybe necessarily would have otherwise. And the last way is just to assign different roles within a group project. You can have a single assignment broken down into a number of different parts. So you could have vocabulary be one part, and you have a student working on that. You can have theme be a part, and somebody's working on that. You can have character development be a part and have somebody working on that. It could be different parts of the body if you have them defining different things, the mitochondria, animal cells, plant cells. So they're all contributing in different ways. They're focusing on different parts of a total project. Similar to scaffolding, but that can also be used to contribute to a bigger project like a Google site or a slides presentation, where they're going to pull everything that they all contributed and shared into one place. So these are just some of the different ways that you can use a Google Doc with groups of students to help them collaborate. And once there is a great deal of information within a Google Doc, the table of contents, the outline on the left will show up, and you can even sort through different parts of the document more quickly.
Now that you've reached the end of the episode, you should be able to share a single document to multiple students, use comments and suggestions to guide student work, use the version history for accountability and to recall deleted or altered content, organize duplicate copies of documents in Drive, and plan real-life applications for collaborative docs with students. For more information about additional TRLE video on-demand sessions and other available TRLE programs, go to pd.swboces.org/TRLE_grant or contact Mary Beth Wilson. We value your feedback about your experience with this digital resource. Please take a moment to share feedback about your experience with this resource using the following link.